I'm Stacy Ellis, 28, and my family has always treated me like a shadow. My brother, the golden child, a successful lawyer, could do no wrong. And me, I poured my heart into holding the family together, sacrificing my own dreams, always trying to make them proud. But for them, it was never enough. They smiled at my brother, patted his back with pride, while I only received cold stares and sharper words. "Why can't you be more like him?" they said, their voices cutting straight through me like blades. I swallowed it all, stayed silent, believing that one day they'd finally see me. Then my brother's wedding drew near. I was handed the responsibility to make everything perfect, running every detail, ensuring nothing went wrong. I thought maybe this time they would notice me. But I was wrong. The night before the big day, we sat around the dinner table. My brother demanded more lavish bands, imported flowers, things I simply could not provide. I said no, and that's when my parents snapped. Their words struck like a blow I never saw coming. "The greatest gift for your brother's wedding is you, vanishing from this family forever." The room went silent. My chest tightened. But I didn't beg. I stood, grabbed my keys, and walked out. The door closed behind me like a final full stop. The wedding day came. Everything seemed perfect, until it all collapsed in the blink of an eye. If it were you, would you stay to witness it or walk away forever? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your answer. Years earlier, I was a freelance marketer with big dreams. I'd just landed a contract with a major supermarket chain, $40,000 to revamp their regional ad campaign. It was my ticket to independence, a chance to build my name in a cutthroat industry. But then, my family's grocery store in Erie, Pennsylvania, hit rock bottom. Bills piled up, suppliers stopped calling, and my parents were drowning in debt. My mom's voice cracked over the phone, begging me to help. My dad, usually stoic, admitted they might lose everything. I couldn't let that happen. So I walked away from the contract. I called the supermarket's rep, canceled the deal, and poured every ounce of my energy into saving our store. I crafted a marketing campaign from scratch, ads on local radio, flyers in every mailbox, even early social media posts on clunky platforms. I negotiated with vendors, charmed customers, and slashed costs. Within months, foot traffic doubled. The store's revenue climbed, and we paid off the worst debts. I worked nights tweaking slogans, designing posters, believing this would finally make them see me. But they didn't. My mom, Joyce Reed, and my dad, Jeffrey Reed, called a family meeting one evening. I expected gratitude, maybe a nod for pulling us through. Instead, they handed the store's reins to my brother, Brent Ellis. "He's a lawyer," my mom said, her eyes glowing with pride. "He's got the head for this." Brent, who hadn't lifted a finger, who spent those months at his law firm, was now in charge. My dad nodded, avoiding my gaze. "It's for the best," he said. I stood there stunned, my chest tight. Brent smirked, adjusting his tie, already planning changes to my campaign. "You did okay, Stacy," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. Okay, I'd saved their legacy. I'd sacrificed my future. But to them, I was just the backup, the one who filled in gaps. My mom kept praising Brent's vision as if my work was nothing. My dad didn't even look up from his coffee. I wanted to scream, to demand they acknowledge what I'd done. But I didn't. I swallowed the hurt, forced a smile, and kept going. Late nights at the store, I'd reorganize shelves, update ads, anything to stay useful. I told myself they'd notice eventually. If I worked harder, proved myself more, they'd see my worth. Maybe at a family dinner, my mom would finally say, "You saved us." Maybe my dad would clap my shoulder, not Brent's. Nathan Todd, my best friend since college, saw through it. We'd meet at a diner, and he'd shake his head over my stories. "They're blind, Stacy," he said one night, sipping coffee. "You're killing yourself for people who don't care." I brushed it off, but his words stuck. I couldn't stop hoping, couldn't quit, trying to earn their respect. So I stayed, pouring myself into their world, believing one day they'd value me. The store thrived because of my campaign. Customers filled the aisles, cash registers hummed, and suppliers returned. But every time I walked in, I saw Brent's name on the manager's office door. My parents would call him to discuss strategy while I was left restocking shelves. "Good job," my mom said once, distracted as if I'd mopped a floor, not saved their business. Brent would breeze in, tossing out ideas I'd already implemented, and they'd nod like he'd invented them. I kept waiting for a thank you, a real one. I kept thinking maybe next time. Maybe if I did more, they'd see me as more than the lesser child. So I pushed forward, ignoring the ache in my chest, hoping for the day they'd finally say I was enough. Months later, I was knee-deep in planning my brother's wedding. Brent was set to marry Lindsay Newman, his fiancée, and my parents handed me the reins to make it happen. They didn't ask if I had the time or money, just expected me to deliver. I'd been freelancing as a marketer, scraping by, but I dipped into my savings, $10,000 to cover deposits for vendors, a venue, everything. I wanted it to be perfect, not for Brent, but to prove I could do something they'd value. I spent weeks calling caterers, florists, photographers, locking in every detail. I picked a menu: roast chicken, garlic, mashed potatoes, summer salads to fit the budget. I met with vendors in Erie, haggling to keep costs down, double-checking contracts to avoid mistakes. But Brent had other ideas. He didn't just want a wedding, he wanted a spectacle. "Get a string quartet from Pittsburgh," he demanded over breakfast one morning, scrolling through his phone. "And those rare orchids from overseas, Lindsay saw them in a magazine." I explained the budget was tight, that my savings were already stretched thin. He rolled his eyes. "You're always cutting corners, Stacy. Make it happen." My mom Joyce chimed in, sipping her coffee. "He's right. This is his day. Don't mess it up." My dad Jeffrey just nodded, flipping through his newspaper. Their words stung, but I kept going, thinking maybe a flawless wedding would finally earn their respect. I worked late nights, emailing vendors, adjusting plans. I found a local band willing to play for less, booked standard roses instead of imported flowers. Every choice was calculated to balance Brent's demands with reality. But he kept pushing. One afternoon he called, insisting on a celebrity DJ from Cleveland. "It's only a few thousand more," he said, like it was nothing. I reminded him I was funding half the wedding myself. "Figure it out," he snapped, hanging up. Joyce overheard and shook her head. "Why can't you just do what he wants?" she said. Jeffrey glanced up, muttering, "Don't ruin this for him." I felt dismissed, like my efforts were invisible. I'd spent hours coordinating, sacrificing my own projects to make their vision work. Yet every step they criticized. At a family lunch, Joyce pointed out a typo in the invitation draft I'd shown her. "Careless," she said, tossing it aside. Brent smirked, adding, "Typical Stacy." I wanted to snap back to tell them how much I was carrying, but I bit my tongue. I kept tweaking the seating chart, confirming deliveries, hoping they'd see the work behind it. Nathan noticed the toll it was taking. We met at a coffee shop in Erie one evening, and I vented about Brent's endless demands. "He wants a custom ice sculpture now," I said, exhausted. Nathan leaned forward, his voice firm. "Stacy, you're bending over backward for people who don't appreciate you. Stand up for yourself." I shrugged, stirring my coffee. "If I pull this off, maybe they'll finally see me." He shook his head, unconvinced. "They won't. You're worth more than their approval." But I couldn't stop. I kept at it, calling the venue daily, ensuring the linens were perfect, the cake ordered. I even paid an extra deposit to secure a backup generator just in case. My savings dwindled, but I told myself it was worth it. If I could deliver Brent's perfect day, maybe Joyce would smile at me for once. Maybe Jeffrey would say something other than "Don't ruin it." I poured everything into the wedding, believing it was my chance to shine. Brent's demands kept escalating. At one point, he texted me a link to a luxury catering service, insisting on caviar appetizers. I called him, explaining it would blow the budget. "You're embarrassing me," he said, his voice cold. Joyce overheard when I visited the house, and she sighed. "Just do what he asks, Stacy. It's not that hard." Jeffrey nodded, not looking up from his TV. Their dismissal burned, but I kept working, adjusting plans, hoping the wedding would change how they saw me. The night before the wedding, I sat at our family's dining table in Erie, the air thick with tension. My mom had cooked her usual roast, but no one was eating. Brent leaned back in his chair, scrolling through his phone while his fiancée Lindsay picked at her plate. My dad sipped his wine, barely glancing up. I'd spent months planning Brent's wedding, pouring $10,000 of my savings into it, but tonight felt different, like a storm was brewing. I braced myself, hoping for a quiet evening. Brent broke the silence. "Stacy, we need to upgrade the menu," he said, not looking up. "Add lobster tails and that vintage champagne from Napa Valley. Oh, and hire that photographer from Pittsburgh, the one who shot the governor's gala." I stared at him, my fork frozen. Lobster tails champagne that cost $500 a bottle, a photographer charging $3,000 a day. I'd already stretched my savings to the limit, covering half the wedding's cost. "Brent, I can't," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I've already paid for everything, the venue, the band, the flowers. There's no money left." He scoffed, tossing his phone on the table. "You're always so cheap, Stacy. This is my wedding. Make it happen." Joyce set her glass down hard, her eyes narrowing. "He's right," she said. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime day." "Why are you being so selfish?" Jeffrey looked up, his voice gruff. "Don't ruin this for your brother." My chest tightened, their words cutting deeper than I expected. I'd given everything, my time, my money, my energy, and they still saw me as the problem. I tried to explain. "I've spent $10,000 of my own savings. The budget's maxed out. Lobster and a celebrity photographer aren't possible." Brent rolled his eyes, leaning toward Lindsay. "See, I told you she'd skimp on us." Lindsay stayed quiet, avoiding my gaze. Joyce folded her arms, her voice sharp. "You've always been like this, Stacy. Never stepping up when it matters." Jeffrey nodded, adding, "Brent deserves better than your half-hearted effort." Half-hearted, I'd worked nights, haggled with vendors, made their dream wedding possible. But to them, it was nothing. I pushed back, my voice rising. "I've paid for half this wedding. I've done everything you asked. I can't keep pouring money I don't have into this." Brent smirked, shaking his head. "Then maybe you shouldn't be involved at all," he said. Joyce leaned forward, her eyes cold. "You know what, Stacy? The greatest gift for your brother's wedding is you vanishing from this family forever." The room went silent. Jeffrey didn't flinch, just stared at his plate. Lindsay shifted uncomfortably, saying nothing. My heart pounded, their words echoing like a slap. Vanish. After all I'd done, I wanted to scream, to list every sacrifice I'd made. But their faces, Joyce's glare, Jeffrey's indifference, Brent's smug grin told me it wouldn't matter. They'd chosen him again. I stood my chair, scraping the floor. "Fine," I said, my voice low but firm. "If that's what you want." I grabbed my purse, my keys jangling in my hand. Joyce called after me. "Don't make a scene, Stacy." But I was done listening. I walked out the door, slamming behind me, the sound sharp and final. Outside, the cold, eerie air hit my face, but I felt a fire inside. I'd given them everything, my savings, my time, my hope, and they'd thrown it back in my face. Sitting in my car, I gripped the steering wheel, my mind racing. They wanted me gone. Fine. But I wasn't going to fade quietly. I'd spent months building their perfect day, only to be told I was the problem. No more. I wasn't sure what I'd do next, but one thing was clear: I was done being their doormat. I started the engine, my resolve hardening. Tomorrow, they'd see what happened when I stopped carrying their weight. The next morning, I woke up with their words still burning in my ears. I sat on my bed, staring at my phone, my savings account app open. $10,000, my entire nest egg, sat tied up in deposits for Brent's wedding. Caterers, florists, the band, all paid from my pocket to make their day perfect. But after last night's dinner, their demand for me to vanish forever changed everything. I wasn't going to let them walk over me anymore. I started calling vendors. First, the caterer. Cancel the order. I said, my voice steady. I'm pulling the deposit. The woman on the line hesitated, asking about penalties, but I didn't care. Next, the florist. No roses, no centerpieces, I told her. Refund my payment. The band was last. They'd already cashed my check, but I demanded a chargeback. By noon, I'd clawed back most of my $10,000, leaving the wedding stripped bare. No flowers, no music, no food. I didn't feel guilt, only resolve. They wanted me out. I'd give them a wedding they'd never forget. By afternoon, chaos erupted at the venue. Guests arrived to empty tables, no band playing, no bouquets in sight. Lindsay, Brent's fiancée, stood in her gown, stunned as relatives whispered in confusion. Brent, red-faced, yelled at the venue staff who had no answers. Joyce called me, her voice shrill through my voicemail. Stacy, what have you done? You've ruined everything. Jeffrey left a message too, his tone cold. You're a disgrace to this family. I didn't call back. Their accusations didn't faze me. I'd heard enough. That evening, Brent took to an online forum, a local Erie message board buzzing with gossip. My sister sabotaged my wedding, he posted, his words dripping with venom. She's jealous, spiteful, and ruined the best day of my life. He painted me as the villain, claiming I'd deliberately tanked his big moment. Comments piled up, some from neighbors I'd known for years, calling me selfish, unhinged. Joyce chimed in, replying to Brent's post. She's always been trouble. Jeffrey didn't post, but I knew he agreed. Their lies spread like wildfire, twisting the truth to save face. I sat in my apartment reading the posts, my stomach churning. Part of me wanted to fire back, to expose how I'd funded half their dream wedding, how they'd demanded more than I could give. But what was the point? They'd never admit they were wrong. Instead, I opened my laptop and started searching for apartments in Asheville, North Carolina. I'd visited once, loved the quiet mountains, the fresh start it promised. Erie held nothing for me anymore, just a family that saw me as disposable. I made a call to a realtor asking about rentals. Something small, I said. I'm starting over. Nathan stopped by that night, his face grim. They're trashing you online, he said, showing me Brent's post on his phone. You okay? I nodded, though my hands shook. I'm done with them, I told him. He didn't push. Just sat with me as I packed a few boxes, closed books, my laptop. You're stronger than they know, he said before leaving. His words stayed with me, a small anchor in the storm. By midnight, I'd booked a one-way bus ticket to Asheville for the next week. The wedding's collapse was on them, they'd pushed me too far. Joyce's voicemail played again in my mind, her voice blaming me for their embarrassment. Jeffrey's cold tone echoed, labeling me a disgrace. Brent's post with its lies stung worst of all. But I wasn't staying to fight their narrative. I'd given them everything, my money, my effort, my hope, and they'd thrown it away. Now, I was choosing myself. Weeks after the chaos, I stood in my small Erie office packing up the last of my things. I'd built a modest freelance marketing business over the years, a side hustle that brought in just enough to keep me afloat. It wasn't much, just a rented room with a desk, a computer, and a few client files, but it was mine. I'd decided to sell it. A local agency offered $25,000 for my client list and contracts. I signed the papers without hesitation, the pen steady in my hand. That money, plus the $10,000 I'd pulled back from the wedding, was my ticket out. I also made a harder call. For years, I'd poured myself into my family's grocery store, first with the marketing campaign that saved it, then with a $5,000 investment from my savings to keep it running. I'd managed inventory, negotiated with suppliers, kept the books balanced. But after their betrayal, I was done. I contacted the bank and withdrew my investment, every cent. I didn't call Joyce or Jeffrey to warn them. They'd made their choice when they told me to vanish. Without my money and management, the store's cracks, ones I'd patched for years, would split wide open. By the end of the month, I was on a bus to Asheville, North Carolina. My belongings fit in 2 suitcases: clothes, a laptop, a few books. The mountains loomed outside the window, their quiet promise pulling me forward. I'd rented a small apartment downtown, nothing fancy, just a one-bedroom with a view of the Blue Ridge Peaks. The first night I sat on the bare floor eating takeout, feeling lighter than I had in years. Erie was behind me, Joyce, Jeffrey, Brent, and their venom too. The family store didn't last long after I left. Nathan texted me updates, his messages blunt. Suppliers stopped delivering when payments stalled. Customers dwindled, turned off by empty shelves. Brent, who'd been handed the reins, fumbled every decision. Joyce tried to step in, but she couldn't handle the logistics I'd managed. Jeffrey just retreated, blaming everyone else. Within weeks, the store declared bankruptcy, its doors locked for good. Nathan wrote, "They're falling apart without you." I didn't reply. Their failure wasn't my burden anymore. In Asheville, I started over. I took freelance marketing jobs, small gigs for local shops, crafting ads for coffee roasters and boutiques. The work was steady, my skills sharp from years of hustling. I kept to myself at first, wary of new faces, but the city's warmth pulled me in. One morning, I wandered into a bakery downtown, drawn by the smell of fresh bread. Shirley Bennett, the bakery owner, greeted me with a wide smile. She was in her 50s, her apron dusted with flour, her laugh loud enough to fill the room. "You look new around here," she said, sliding a free scone across the counter. We got to talking. I told her I'd just moved, leaving out the messy details. Shirley didn't pry, just shared stories of her own, how she'd started the bakery after a divorce, rebuilding from scratch. "Takes guts to start over," she said, her eyes kind. She invited me to a local business meetup, introducing me to shop owners who needed marketing help. I landed 2 clients that week thanks to her. Shirley became a regular part of my day's coffee at her bakery, chats about life, her steady presence grounding me. I didn't hear from Joyce or Jeffrey. Brent sent one angry email accusing me of tanking the family business. "You're selfish?" he wrote, as if I hadn't kept it alive for years. I deleted it without responding. Lindsay stayed silent, probably caught in Brent's orbit. I thought about Nathan's words from Erie. "You're stronger than they know." He was right. In Asheville, I wasn't the shadow I'd been in Erie. I was building something new, clients, connections, a life that felt mine. One evening, Shirley invited me to her bakery after hours. We sat with mugs of tea, the smell of cinnamon rolls lingering. "You seem different," she said. Settling in, I nodded, realizing I hadn't thought about Erie in days. For the first time, I felt unburdened, like I could breathe without carrying their expectations. Asheville was my fresh start, and with Shirley's help, I was finding my place. I wasn't looking back. Months later, Asheville had become my sanctuary, but the fallout from Erie still rippled. The family grocery store, once the heart of my parents' world, was gone, its shuttered windows a symbol of their unraveling. Joyce and Jeffrey faced a harsh new reality. Their savings dwindled, forcing them to sell their house and move into a cramped apartment on the edge of Erie. Neighbors who once greeted them warmly now avoided their gaze, their reputation tarnished by the store's collapse. Brent fared no better. His charm, once enough to win him favors, couldn't mask his mismanagement. He'd taken a job at a hardware store, but customers whispered about his role in the family's downfall, his arrogance no longer carrying weight. Lindsay, his fiancée, drifted away, their engagement quietly dissolving amid the strain. The life they'd built on borrowed glory had crumbled. I didn't dwell on their struggles. Asheville was my focus, a place where I could rebuild without their shadows. My freelance marketing business was taking root. I'd secured contracts with 5 local businesses: a brewery, a bookstore, an art gallery, a cafe, and a hiking gear shop. My days were filled with designing logos, writing ad copy, and pitching campaigns over coffee in bustling downtown cafes. My income hovered around $3,000 a month, enough for my modest apartment groceries and occasional treats like a concert ticket or a new pair of hiking boots. Each project felt like a brick in the foundation of a life I was crafting for myself. Nathan remained a steady presence even from miles away. He'd call every few weeks, his voice warm over the crackling line. "Erie's not the same without you," he said once, then laughed. "But you're killing it out there." He sent photos of his latest woodworking project, small tokens that kept our friendship alive. His encouragement reminded me of the strength I'd forgotten I had. Shirley, the bakery owner, was my anchor in Asheville. Her shop, with its cozy wooden tables and scent of fresh pastries, was where I'd brainstorm ideas or unwind after long days. She'd slip me a free muffin saying, "Fuel for the grind." Her belief in me, uncomplicated, unwavering, helped me see myself as more than the daughter who'd never been enough. Then came Joyce's letter. It arrived one crisp morning, her handwriting shaky on the envelope. She claimed she'd been diagnosed with a serious illness, begging me to return to Erie to help her and Jeffrey rebuild. The words were heavy with guilt, painting me as the key to their salvation. I read it twice, my stomach tight. Shirley, wiping down her counter, saw my face and asked what was wrong. I handed her the letter. She scanned it, her brow furrowing. "This smells like manipulation," she said, tossing it aside. "People don't change overnight." Her bluntness cut through my doubt. I'd seen Joyce's tactics before, using pity to pull strings. Nathan, when I called him, agreed. "She's trying to drag you back," he said. "Don't fall for it." I didn't. I wrote one reply, short and final. "I wish you well, but I'm not coming back." I mailed it and blocked their numbers. Cutting them off wasn't easy. Part of me still ached for the family I'd wanted them to be. But I knew staying tethered to their chaos would only erode the peace I'd found. Shirley nodded when I told her, her eyes proud. "You're choosing you," she said, pouring me coffee. "That's the hardest, bravest thing." Nathan echoed her in his next call, saying, "You're free now. Don't look back." Their support, steady and real, gave me the courage to let go. In Asheville, I was building more than a career. I joined a local hiking group, trekking trails like Black Balsam Knob, where the mountains stretched endless and wild. I started painting again, a hobby I'd abandoned in Erie, filling sketchbooks with watercolor landscapes. My apartment became a home, plants on the windowsill, a rug from a local market, a shelf of books I actually had time to read. I landed a big contract with a regional tourism board, a 6-month campaign that doubled my income. The work was challenging, but every late night spent tweaking slogans felt like proof of my worth. One evening at Shirley's bakery, I sat with her and a few of her regulars, laughing over stories of Asheville's quirky festivals. A client stopped by, thanking me for a campaign that had boosted his shop's foot traffic. I smiled, feeling a warmth I hadn't known in Erie. The lesson was sinking in. My value wasn't tied to what I did for Joyce, Jeffrey, or Brent. It was in the life I was creating, the clients who trusted me, the friends who lifted me, the quiet moments where I felt whole. Asheville wasn't just a fresh start. It was where I learned to stand tall, not for anyone else, but for myself.